Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chabura Members Shiur. Here in the States, it's the Yom HaZikaron, but happy Yom HaAtzmaut to our brothers and sisters across the pond and in Israel. Tonight, we have Rav Ilan Acoca with us for the second installment of his member series on the halachot relating to tzedakah. This year, these 2 days of Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut are particularly moving and significant, and we appreciate everyone for joining us live and learning Torah together. And may our learning be in memory for all those who gave up their lives for our people, and in the merit of the safety and success of our soldiers on the front lines and of the strength of our country. Stay tuned for a special video in honor of Yom HaAtzmaut. They'll be shared on our platforms soon. Thank you, everyone, for being here live, and all those who will be listening afterwards. And Rabbi Acoca, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Oad. And again, it's a pleasure to be here. And as Oad mentioned, it's still Yom HaZikaron here. So it should be Le'ilui Nishmat and Imnuchat Kol HaNiftarim, all the people who, Kol HaKadoshim, all the people who gave their lives in different battles and the terror attacks that took place, whether in Israel or wherever it is. And I would say in particular for me, a couple of names that come to mind is Gadi Levi, a good friend of my brother, who he served with my brother the first Lebanon War in 1982. And for me, it was like a big brother. He was 20 years old, and unfortunately, his Jeep went on a mine and he lost his life. And as well, more recently, Ben Mizrahi, who unfortunately was murdered on October 7th. Ben was a very, very dear friend of my family. I saw him growing. I saw him as a child. I was there officiating his bar mitzvah. And he was a lone soldier. After he finished his high school in Vancouver, where I was the rabbi, he decided that he's going to go to Israel. He went to Mechina, and then he went to paratroopers, and then he was a medic. He took a course, and October 7th, he was in the Nova Festival, and rather than he could have run away, he died as a hero, trying to protect and to save other lives. So he's a Chabaruch. May his memory be for a blessing. I had the zchut yesterday actually to be in Vancouver in and out for less than 24 hours, a very long trip, but just to be there with the family to support them on Yom HaZikaron. His mother spoke, his father said Tzedakah, and I was just there just to support them and just to feel a little bit of the pain that they are going through. And unfortunately, it's not just me, but it's all of Am Israel. We are all brothers and sisters. And may the zechut of the Torah that we're going to be learning will be Le'ilui Nishmat, as I said before, all of the Kedoshim. So we're going to start. We're going to start with. We're going to continue on with the Hilchot Tzedakah. Last time we started Perek Zayin, and we're going to go through quickly, and I'll share with you the screen. A little bit of what we have done, and we did. I would believe it was four different halachot in Perek Zayin of the Rambam, and let's see. I'll try to share that. I think I have it. Give me one moment. Let's see if it's going. Oh, very good. Okay, so we spoke about the Rambam, and the Rambam spoke about the idea that we have mitzvat aseh, we have a positive mitzvah to give tzedakah to Ani Yisrael, and the Rambam went through the psukim. Says in the pasuk, "Ki patuach tiftach et yadecha," among other psukim, you have to open your hand and give. As well, the Rambam says that's a positive mitzvah. The negative mitzvah is that if someone doesn't give, he's over on lo ta'aseh. He basically transgresses what the Torah says. It says in the Torah, lo te'ametz et levavecha. Don't close your heart. Okay, lo tikpos et yadecha. Don't make a fist. Don't close your hand, and you should give it to give the ani, the poor person, whatever he's in need of. And then the Rambam went through as well the details of what we have to do. For example, if someone doesn't have clothes, you have to give him clothes, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, interestingly, before we continue on, I was thinking even the way that it's described, Yilchot Tzedakah in the Rambam, the Rambam doesn't call them Yilchot Tzedakah, but Yilchot Matnot Aniyim. I think there's a big difference between Tzedakah and Matnot Aniyim. I believe that there's a sensitivity here. Matnot Aniyim means giving gifts to the poor. Tzedakah depends on how you interpret it, but tzedakah, like they say, there's a word that they say nebach, poor guy, we're gonna help him. No, matenot aniyim means that you are giving like a gift. When you're giving gift to someone, you give it to him, usually, hopefully all the time, but you give it to him through simcha, through happiness. So when Hashem is giving you the opportunity of giving matana, give it as a gift to a poor person and feel good about what we are doing. And by the way, we went through that in the Rambam itself, where the Rambam is saying that there's a mitzvah to do so. We even spoke about the fact that that Hashem created the world that way in order for us to have the opportunity of giving. And as we spoke as well, we said it's not only money, but it's also time. It could be some time is valuable. So everyone's time is valuable. If you give time to someone, certainly it could be also, in a sense, it could be also a tzedakah as well. Okay, so we are up to halacha dalet. Okay, says the Rambam. And he's continuing on with what he said before in Halacha Gimel, talking about orphans, okay? Orphans are very important in the Torah, widows as well. I believe it's written in the Torah 37 times. 37 times. I don't think there's any other mitzvah in the Torah that is written as many times as when it's talking about Yatom ve'almana. When it comes to the orphans, we come to the widows. And why? Because usually someone who's an orphan, how does he feel? He feels, I lost my dad, I lost my mom, I lost my parents. He feels bad about it. And sometimes maybe he feels that he's like second class. Now the Torah says, no, you have to be extremely, extremely, extremely sensitive to the yetomim and the almanot. So the Rambam says in Halacha Dalet, yatom sheba le'asio isha, sochrin lo bait umatziin lo mita v'chol kele tashmisho ve'achar kach matziin lo isha. An orphan who comes, first of all, okay, and he's coming because he wants to get married. So what do you have to do? You have to rent a house for him. We're talking about an orphan, obviously, who can't afford it. You have cases like that. So you can't afford it. What do you have to do? An orphan who can't afford it, rent him a house. Matziin lo mita. You have to prepare the bed for him. Buy him a bed, furniture. Kol kli tashmisho. So the Rambam says, right? Everything that he's in need of. Ve'achar kach masi'in lo isha. And then after that, you take him into the wedding. So you start with, you prepare. You can't, okay, mazal tov, okay, we'll marry you off. No, you can't marry him off. First of all, prepare everything from him. It's a responsibility, as we said before, as we said last week. Giving tzedakah is not someone who's coming, I'm going to give him $10 and I'll have a good day. No, you have to assess the situation. This yatom, this person who's coming, this orphan is coming, he's coming, he has nothing. He has no one to support him. His parents are not around to marry him off. So it's the responsibility of who? Of the kihila, of the community. The community has this responsibility that the parents had, but the parents are not around. So you have to be sensitive to that. How are you sensitive? Start, first of all, go and get him a house. Then get him a bed. Then get him all the furniture that he's in need of. Now, here's an interesting question regarding this Rambam. If the Rambam says that you have to give him, start with a house, great. But then he says bed, and then he says everything else that he needs. Why does he specify a bed? I mean, the Rambam could have said, give him everything that he's in, all the furniture that he's in need of. I believe that there's an interesting diuk here in the Rambam. The Rambam says if someone doesn't have a choice, which means the community is not a well-to-do community. So they have a choice between bed or other furniture. Start with the bed. The bed is very important to have a bed. Everything else will come after. So that's why I think the Rambam is emphasizing here. First of all, okay, you start with an apartment or a house for him. Then after that, next thing is buy him a bed. He's going to have a bedroom. And then after that, go into the rest of the furniture that he's that he's in need of. Okay. And again, I'm just forgot to mention that if you have any questions, just raise your hand or unmute and please ask. Feel free to ask. I love questions. Okay. So let's continue on. So the Rambam says the following. בא העני ושאל די מחסורו, ואין יד הנותן משגת, נותן לו כפי השגת ידו. Now, the Rambam, you remember the Rambam last week we said that the Rambam says that you have to give the poor person according to his needs. And the Rambam actually proved it from the Pasuk, okay? Pasuk in the Torah, according to the Pasuk in the Torah, you have to assess the poor person. This guy was, whatever, you had a nice car before, so you have to buy him the same car that he had before. But this is how the Rambam learns that. But comes the Rambam here, and I shared with you, and I told you last week, I told you, okay, so you know what? Congregants of man could come to me, and they'll have a good question. Wait, what do you mean? If we're going to give him a Rolls Royce that you had before, what's going to happen with that? We won't have money. It doesn't work that way. So how do you understand the Rambam? Comes the Rambam in Halakha, and he explains that. He says, Baha ani v'sha'al de machzero. So this poor person comes and he says, you know what? This is what I had before. Now you have to provide me with the same thing. Ve'en yad hanoten maseget ve'en yad hanoten maseget. Now the person who wants to give him, he would love to give him a Rolls Royce, but he can't. He doesn't have. So how does it work? You don't give him anything. Do you give him? How much do you give him? So noten lo kefi hasagat yado. So the Rambam, obviously, common sense, right? You give him according to what you could afford. Obviously, if the person has the ability to help him and to tell him, you know what, you had a mansion before, and I could afford to buy you the mansion that you had before, great. That's the ideal situation. But the fact is, it doesn't always work that way. So someone is coming to me, and I cannot afford to give him the same lifestyle that he had before. What do? It's according to Hasagat Yado, according to what I could afford. Whatever I could afford, I give him. Now, the Rambam also asks, Vikama, and how much is that? Ad chomesh nechasav, until a fifth of your assets, 20%. Mitzvah min hamubchar. And this is the choices of the mitzvah. If you want to fulfill the mitzvah the best way, says the Rambam here, 20%. And again, if you could afford it, obviously. If a person is going to give 20% and then he's going to be in need himself, no, it doesn't work that way. Obviously, we spoke about that before, right? To first of all take care of yourself. But if Baruch Hashem, the person has, so 20%. Now, achad me'asara bin chasav benoni. Now, if he takes 10%, that's good as well. Ma'aser. Right? We learn it from Yaakov Avinu. It says by, among other psukim, V'chol asher titen li, aser a'aserenu lach. Yaakov says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he's about to meet Esav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, now let's make a deal. Okay, you'll help me with Esav, and in return, whatever you'll give me, I will give you aser. What is aser? 10%. I'm going to tithe it. Okay, so the Rambam says that, right? Achad me'asara bin chasav benoni. Now, if you give 10%, you are considered to be a benoni. What is benoni? In the middle. So the best thing, 20%. Benoni is not the choices of the mitzvah, but it's fine as well, 10%. Now, how about less than that? Pachot mikan. If it's less than that, ayn ra'ah. This person is considered to be someone who has ayn ra'ah. Ayn ra'ah means an evil eye, which means, in this case, what does it mean? He is a miser. Okay? And again, it's when he could afford it. He could afford it. So you should give, ideally, if you could afford it, 20%. You can't give 20%, okay, 10%. But not less than that. Okay? But, says the Rambam, something else. A beautiful thing. He says, okay, so a person can afford it. Well, what should he do? You shouldn't give tzedakah? No, you should give. Ul'olam alimna adam atzmo mishlishit hashekel b'shana. We'll look into that. a person should not give less than a third of a shekel a year. Even if he can't afford it, he should give something. Why? Because that will make the person, it's going to be a habit of the person to give. This is what the Torah is trying to teach us. You can't give, okay, you can give 20%, give 10%. You can't give 10%, at least give whatever you could do. How much? Lishita shekel, a third of a shekel, is something that everyone could afford. V'chol hanoted pachot mizeh, says the Rambam, if someone gives less than that, a third of a shekel is not a lot of money. If someone gives less than a third of a shekel, lo kiyem mitzvah. Then he did not fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah. That's the minimum, says the Rambam. And along those lines, says the Rambam, ve'afilu ani hamitparmes min tzedakah, even if it's someone, a poor person. And how does he get his money? Tzedakah. He goes and he knocks on doors, please give me tzedakah. Even that person, this pauper, this ani who's getting tzedakah, mitparnes min tzedakah, chayav liten tzedakah le'acher, he still has the obligation of giving tzedakah to someone else who's in need. So no one is patur, no one is exempt from tzedakah. Everyone is obligated to give tzedakah. The same thing along those lines. We have on Purim 4 different mitzvot. One of them is matanot la'evyonim. When it comes to matanot la'evyonim, they have to give money to the poor people. Even someone who's in ani, even someone who is poor, is still obligated to give on Purim matanot la'evyonim, a gift to someone else who's in need. And why? Because the idea is to build a world of kindness. Olam, it says in the pasuk, Olam chesed ibaneh. Right? We have to build a world of kindness. And building a world of kindness means that everyone is going to give. There's no exception to the rule. Everyone is chayav, whatever he or she could afford. Right? A little bit, a lot, doesn't make any difference. Okay? A story that comes to mind, Chacham, I think it was the Alter Rebbe, one of the Rabbanim of Chabad, and he was in Russia, and he wanted someone to give tzedakah, someone who was well-to-do to give tzedakah. Okay, so it was a cold day, middle of a cold day in Russia, and he went over to the house of this ashir, this wealthy person. He knocked on the door, and the wealthy person, one of the servants, opens the door. He sees the Chacham here. The Chacham is coming to kavod. So he tells them, come in. He says, no, I'm waiting for, tell your master or whatever to come. I want to talk to him. So the Baal Habayit comes, this wealthy person comes, says to the Chacham, why are you outside? Please come. No, come outside. The Chacham says to come outside. He comes outside. And as he comes outside, he's talking 1 minute, 2 minutes. He says, it's cold outside. Please come inside. He says, no, I want to talk to you here. Finally, he tells him, no, Rabbi, please come inside. And then he asks him, why did you want me to be outside? He says, because I want you to feel the cold in order for you to understand that there are people out there who really don't have anything. It's a beautiful way of sometimes a beautiful lesson, right? So you give, but you have to sometimes feel. And that's what the Rambam is trying to teach us. Again, it's not just someone coming, and I said it last week, but I think it's important just to review, for us to get into that mode. Someone is coming, okay, $10, Hazaku Baruch, have a good night. No, it's more than that. Feel his pain. See who he is. What is he going through? Give a little bit more time. I know that time is precious, and sometimes we are busy, but that's the thing. The thing is to try to fight, to try to be sensitive. And that's what the Rambam is saying. And along those lines, he's saying, okay, so everyone, you have to, when it comes to sensitivity, everyone has to be sensitive. Everyone has to be a giver. How much you give? Oh, that depends on you. You have a lot, give a lot. You have a little, give a little. But no one is patur. There's a minimum, and the minimum again is a third of a shekel. A third of a shekel is something that is really, really not a lot that everyone could afford. And therefore, if someone can't afford, so you give a third of a shekel in order to be yotzei to fulfill the mitzvah. And if you don't do it, so then the Rambam says, lo yatsa, he didn't fulfill his mitzvah. Now, I would like to look at Rav Kapach on what we said. He speaks about Homesh, 20%, right? So Rav Kapach says the following in Tet. So he says, he brings the Mishnah on in Masechet Pe'ah. Elu devarim she'en lan shi'ur ugmilut chasadim. One thing that very, very famous Mishnah in Masechet Pe'ah, we say it actually every morning in the Korbanot, we say it, right? There are certain things that don't have a shi'ur. There's no measure for them. One of them is gmilut chasadim. When it comes to gmilut chasadim, to do chesed with someone else, kindness, no measure to it. שם, כמו תורתו גמילות חסדים, כתב רבנו, גמילות חסדים נאמר על שני סוגים מן המצוות. האחד, סיוע האדם לישראל. So the Rambam speaks about that, writes about that, and he says there are two types of gmilut chasadim. One of them is to help a Jew, b'mamono, with his money. For example, צדקה, pidyon shevuim, to redeem someone who is in prison. A Jew is in prison, to redeem, it's part of tzedakah. That's one type of gmilut chasadim. והשני, סיוע האדם לישראל בגופו. But there's another type of tzedakah, and we spoke about that, but the Rambam says it clearly. What is the other type of tzedakah? You have to do it not with your money, but with your body. For example, nihum avili, to go and to comfort people who are in mourning. That's tzedakah as well. By going and showing your support and being sensitive to them and giving your time, that's tzedakah as well. Gemilut chasadim, levayat metim. There's a levaya, a funeral. Funeral is important as well to go to. Okay, even if you don't know the person, there's a minhag in certain places in Yerushalayim when there is a levaya, loudspeaker. There's a levaya taking place now. Whoever wants to join to do this mitzvah, gemilut chasadim of levayat hamet, come. It's part of the mitzvah of gemilut chasadim. Simchat hatanim, to make happy a hatan and kala, to go to a wedding. V'domehem. And everything the Rambam says, not only that, he gives us a few examples. So here we see that clearly that it's not only money, but it's also time. It's also sensitivity. Now, what does it mean that gmilut chasadim doesn't have a limit? This is talking specifically not about money, because money, we just said, the Rambam said clearly, money, 20%, 10%, or a third of a shekel. But when it comes to gmilut chasadim with no limit, it's talking about my body, which means when it comes to my time to go and to comfort someone who lost a member of his family, or to go to a levaya, then there's no limit to it. You could do as many times as you want because it doesn't cost you anything. It's true, it's costing you your time, but if you have time, so then what better way of doing it? Go and share your time with others and give and be supportive of them. Okay. But the Rav Kapach explained, he says, when it comes to siyua b'mamon, when it comes to help with money, that has a limit. Vehu hamishit mamono. How much? 20%. Ve'en chayav latet yoter al hamishit. You don't have to give more than 20%. Ela imke ima asa ken b'midat hasidut. Unless someone wants to use midat hasidut. What is midat hasidut? Piety. He wants to be pious and give more than that. And again, he could afford it. If not, it's considered to be hasidut shtut. Hasidut shtut is a false type of piety. If the person is going to give more than 20%, but then he's going to be in need himself, obviously we're not talking about that. It's foolishness to do so. If you could do it, there's nothing wrong with doing it, of being pious and give more than 20%. ואמרו נמנו באושה להיות אדם מפריש חומש נכסיו למצווה. וביאור השאלה הזו, לדעתי כפי שהבאר, אם ראה אדם שבויים, הרי הוטל עליו לפתודם כמו שציווה השם. So, So it says also in the Yerushalmi that in Usha, a certain city, they used to have this, they were known about giving 20% to tzedakah. Now, another thing that he brings is Im ra'a adam shvu'im. If a person sees someone who is in captivity and there's a ransom in order to let this person go, so then the person has the responsibility of redeeming them as HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us. Or re'evim or arumim. If someone is hungry or he has no clothes, so then the person who's seeing that has the obligation, the responsibility of giving them food, giving them clothes. כמו שאמר, השם דמחסרו, אשר יחסר לו, as Hashem says in the Torah, אשר יחסר לו, whatever he's in need of, give him. כלומר, what does it mean? שישלים לו כל מה שחסר לו, that we have the obligation, the responsibility to give whatever the person is in need of, according to his individual situation. והרי הוא חייב להשלים להם כל מחסורם, כל זמן שמחסורם או צורך פדיונם הוא פחות מחומש ממונו או חמישיתו. But it's very clear from the Rambam that this has a limit as well. And how much is it? 20%. More than 20% you don't have to give, which means that even if it's in order to redeem someone from prison, you have no obligation to give more than 20%. 20% is the limit. If you want to give more than that and you could afford it, so that's a pious thing to do. But you don't have to. 20% is it. And that's why how the Rambam explains that. So in Halakha, I believe it was in Halakha Gimel, the Rambam said clearly that you have to give the person according to what he had before. But then the Rambam explains that and he says, no, okay, it should have said that, but there's a limit to it. How much? 20%. Okay? אבל אם הם צריכים יותר, בוא תפתני more than 20%, מחומש ממונו, נותן החומש בלבד, then the person is obligated to give the 20%, הוא מסתלק, and then he says to them, I did my tzedakah, have a good day. If you want, maybe go to someone else who's going to continue to give you, who's going to give you the rest that you are in need of. I did my tzedakah. ואין עליו חטא בהימנעו מהשלים כל מה שהם צריכים כיוון שהוא יותר מהחומש. And then the person is not considered in any way sinner for not giving more than 20%. Absolutely not. He gave his 20% and that is it. אבל אם לא יזדמן לו שום דבר מכל מה שאמרנו, מפריש את החומש מן ההכנסות שלו, לא מן הקרן, ומוציא בדבר מצווה. Now, the Rambam does ask a question. The Rav Kappa, he says, what about if he doesn't have to who to give the 20% to? He wants to give the 20%, but they're not, the community that he's in, they're well-to-do, or he doesn't know anyone to give to. What do you do then? Then you have to give 20% from your income, and then you have to motzi'o, and you have to give it for dvar mitzvah. A mitzvah, any mitzvah that you find, it's up to you. Your choice, the choice is yours. Excuse me. Anything, achnasat sefer Torah, tzedakah to the Bet Knesset, to yeshiva, it's up to you. And if a person is not sure of what to give to, so then you should ask counsel from his rabbi or whoever is someone who is learned in order to, because sometimes you could have, you don't know. You have maybe two choices. You could have a Sefer Torah, or help a yeshiva, or help a kollel, or help a hospital, or there's so many different things there. So then you have to figure out what will be how to prioritize. Okay. ושם, הערה 12 כתבתי, והלכות ערכין וחרמין פרק ח' הלכה י"ג, כתב ומפזר כל נכסיו, אין זו חסידות אלא שטות. Now another thing that he says, very important, he says if someone is giving all of his money away, that's not considered to be piety, but it's foolishness. Because the person will find himself eventually with no money. And the Torah doesn't want that, obviously. So a person always it's very important in Judaism to use, and this is no different, to use common sense. A good friend of mine once told me that how does it go? He told me that the less common of all senses is common sense. That's what he told me. But the fact is, you have to use common sense when it comes to it. If I'm going to give everything that I have, I want to be a Hasid Gadol. That's not Hasidut. That's not Hasidut. And by the way, this is not only Chod Tzedakah, but in all of Judaism, a person has to know of how to react and what to do and how much to give and so on and so forth. Okay, fine. And therefore he says, אלא דשם פסק הכתובות דף נון עמוד א', so the Rambam basically follows the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot that says the following, המבזבז אל יבזבז יותר מחומש, that if someone is spending, he shouldn't spend more than 20%, 1/5, ומשמע מכאן שרבנו מפרשה במצווה מן המוחה. Now the Rambam, by the way the Rambam explains that, the Gemara, he says this is the choice, that the best mitzvah that you could do is 20%. אבל במידת חסידות יכול לבזבז מעט יותר מחומש. And if you want to be pious, so then you could be, and the Rav Kapach adds on a very important word. What is it? A little bit more than 20%. Not too much more. Because then it's already, a person will, a normal person who has his normal income, if he'll give more than that, then he will be in need himself. Okay? And this is what Rav Kapach says. Fine, let's continue on with another halacha, or where we were in the Rambam.
It's interesting that it goes by chomesh, meaning we're always thinking about a chomesh like someone with a normal income and he has normal expenses, then a chomesh actually makes sense. But if someone is a billionaire, so he can actually afford a lot more than a chomesh of his income, and he can be completely fine.
Right. So beautiful question. So I believe that we're talking about the normal guy, not if someone is mamash, is one of these billionaires out there, and he could definitely, even if he's going to give 50% of his wealth, he's going to still have a lot. I don't think this is This is a exception to the rule. We're talking about someone who he's comfortable, he lives comfortably, but he's not Ashir Muflag, he's not a billionaire. In that case, be careful with what you're doing. Give, but don't give more than that. You could give a little bit more than 20%, but tough. Yes.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
We're talking about giving money, 20%.
Yes.
I'm wondering about if there are any guidance on how much of my free time I should give to help other people, supporting them, going.
Good question.
Is it actually doing, people in the community, people who are sad, going comforting them, visiting people who are by themselves. Right. I mean, there's a rule for money, but what about for my own time?
So the Rav Kapach explains, says there's no rule for that.
No rule for that, yeah.
No.
Gotcha. Okay, no. Thanks.
So this is a pleasure. So this is obviously a person has to assess of how much time he has between spending on whatever he's in need of. And again, common sense is extremely important. The person needs to whatever, to eat, to exercise, to do whatever he's in need of, to spend time with his family, with his wife, and that should. And I would say that actually, I believe that we could look at what we said last week is. We spoke about, first of all, it starts with yourself, and then after that. So the same thing will happen with that, which means there's no limit to it. As much time as you want, give to a person who's in need of your time. But at the same time, don't forget that it starts with you. It starts with your wife. It starts with your children. It starts with your family. Right? It should not be on the expense of my family. It starts with that, and then after that, when I have extra time, when my family is not in need of me, then I could go and give it to the anim, and vice versa as well, which means that the family has to be understanding. Okay, Abba gave us an hour today, which is great. Now he has time. He needs his time to go and visit the Avelim, the mourners, and so on and so forth. So it's
great. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Pleasure. course. Okay, so let's continue on. Now, the Rambam says, Ani she'en makirin oto, a poor person, we don't know him. And by the way, this is very relevant. We don't know. Someone is coming from out of town. We don't know who the guy is. Or we see someone in the street. Ve'amar ra'evani ha'achiluni. Says, I'm hungry. Give me food. What happens then? Says the Rambam, En budkina harav. You don't have to start checking after him, who he is. Does he need really? No, he's asking for food, which is a necessity. In that case, what do you have to do? Give him food. Give him food. Shema Ramayhu. You have to check after him and say, you know what? Maybe this guy is a crook. Maybe he's a crook. And if he's a crook, in that case, what should you do? Don't give him money. No. He's about the guy is asking for the bare necessity, which is food. Don't check. Just give him the food that he's. Go and buy him from the kosher store, whatever he's in need. Buy him a challah, buy him whatever, some food, and give it to him. Ela mefarnisin oto miyad. You have to give him, and you have to. Let's analyze what the Rambam is saying. You have to give him parnasa. You give him this for the food that he needs miyad, immediately. You cannot tell him, come back in an hour, I'll have some food for you. No, 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 no. Take him by his hand, come into the grocery store. Okay, here, if you take food, I'll pay for it. Miyad, immediately. And why? Why?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll tell you why. Because the thing is, what could happen, and the Gemara speaks about that, okay? The person is, if he's saying that he's hungry and you won't give it to him right away, God forbid, maybe he didn't eat, let's say, I don't know, for a few days. And if you will not give him the food right away, what's going to happen? There's a possibility, God forbid, he's going to die. And that will be my responsibility, because I told him, come back in an hour. This hour was crucial for his life. So that's why the Rambam is saying, miyad, immediately. He's asking for food, take him. Okay? But there's another thing that we can understand from the Rambam. When the Rambam says give him food, it means that you don't have to give him money for food. But take him to the grocery store and give him food. That's what he's looking for. Okay? Fine.
When is it finished?
Okay, says the Rambam.
At 1:30.
Haya arum. Okay? If he didn't have any clothes. The Amar kasuni. And then he says, go and give me clothes. What do you have to do? Then the Rambam says something else. Botkin aharav shema ramayhu. Then you have to look. Maybe he's a crook. Don't give him right away. Look into him. Look who he is. Find out his if he is really in need of or not. And then if he's in need of, wait. And if he's a crook, don't give it to him. Okay? Now, what is the difference between the first case of the food, where you have to give him immediately, and the case of the clothes, where you don't have to give him immediately, but you have to look into him, find who he really is, and if he's really in need of food. Anyone wants to share? What do you think about it? Why does the Rambam says food immediately? Don't even check who he is. He needs it. Doesn't just give him the food. When it comes to clothes, it's a different story. It's a different story. When it comes to clothes, you have to look and find out, and then if he's okay, give it to him. If it's someone who's really in need of, give it to him. If not, not. What's the difference between them? The first case and the second case?
I'm assuming it has to do with what you were saying before, which is he might pass out if there's no food.
Exactly. Right? Pashut. Food, he might pass out. But here, clothes is a different story. Find out who he is. It's not an important thing. By the way, it's not only clothes, but everything else. Someone is coming, right? It happens very, very often, right? All communities get it. Rabbis get it left and right. Some rabbis get it more. Some rabbis get it less. But the fact is, a person is coming. Okay, I am collecting money for this cause. You don't have to give him right away. Find out if it's really. Well, today there's a system usually in place in many different places where he has a letter. Okay, has a letter that he gives it to you. It's from usually in certain places, in many communities, they have what they call the Va'at Tzedakah. Okay, it's like the Tzedakah council, and whoever comes into town goes into to see them. They check into it, and then they give him a letter where they say, the Rabbi so-and-so or Mr. So-and-so who is collecting, we looked into the matter and he's legitimate, and whoever could help him should be blessed by helping him. Okay, so you have something that is legitimate, right? Now you might ask a question. It's a good question. How do I know that the letter that he has is legitimate? So you could research if you want. You have the number of there's a number of on the letter. You could call. It's not. It takes a couple of minutes. You call this person, the letter. First of all, obviously you have to look the date. Everything is okay, and then you call the Tzedakah council, and you see Mr. Rabbi so and so, Mr. So and so is here. Is this legitimate? If they say yes, okay, so you could give it. And if they say we don't know what you're talking about, so you know that the person probably is not an honest person. Okay, fine. And there's other one. Yeah.
Do we have contextual considerations? Like, for example, if let's say the guy coming has no clothes on him at that moment. So even if he's lying that, okay, maybe he has clothes at home, but he doesn't have something right now on him. That's a different issue. Or maybe he's asking for food, but he has access to food, meaning we see that he has access to food. So do we have the ability to play with it, or is this like a Chazal standard?
That's a good question. So the way I understand the Rambam is, this person, you obviously don't know who he is. I mean, okay, because if you will know who he is and still, I'm hungry, but you know that the guy, thank God, doesn't need food. He has plenty of food at home. So then obviously you have to give it to him. We're talking about someone, stop, kacha. We don't know who he is. First time I see him in my life. I have no idea who he is. Mimela, there's a chiluk, the Rambam is saying, between food and clothes. Okay, now you have the good point. The guy is mamash. He's coming. He's the way he's dressed, or let's say Bichlal is not dressed. Bichlal, he has minimum clothes on him. So you have to be sensitive to that as well. Give him something to wear. But I think what the Rambam is, the way I understand the Rambam is, don't go out of your way to give him more, or to go to buy him proper clothes and everything. You can do the minimum in order for him to have something, but don't go out of your way to buy him proper clothes and everything else. Still, you look into the matter and you see what the person is, and then after that, if he's okay, give it. If not, not. Okay. Now, the Rambam again uses common sense, and he says, "Ve'im hayu makirin oto." Now, if you know who the person is, you know the guy, he's known to the community to be someone who is ani, who is a pauper. We know. In that case, mechasin oto. Then you don't have to look into it. Give him the clothes that he needs. Lefi kevodo miyad. And again, the Rambam is saying, very important, according to his kavod. You have to assess to see who the person is. Okay? And in that case, you don't check after him. You don't have to check. You know the person. If he's known to the community and he's known to someone who doesn't have money, so go. Whether it is food, whether it is clothes, whatever he is in need of, it's a responsibility of the community. Okay. Now, very important for us to know as well, to review again and to emphasize it again. A community, part of the community, as Jewish community, we have different responsibilities. One is to take care of the aniyim of the city. Very, very important. And this is what the Rambam is saying, right? You have to be responsible. You have a congregation. So as the rabbi, you should be, or maybe you have someone else besides the rabbi, someone you have in certain places, a tzedakah committee, and they come in front of them and they figure it out. I'll share with you something that someone from Mexico shared with me. He told me that what he started a few years ago, a fund for emergency situations. What is an emergency situation? Someone in the community is in need of a surgery that will not be covered by the insurance. So they go, they have a quick meeting between them, and they give him the money. They look obviously into it, and they give him the money that he's in need of. But he told me the following. He said, so thank God, not all of them, but many of the families, they are well-to-do. So every family they give basically, how much was it? $18,000 a year. So, okay. And there are 12 families like that. $18,000 a year, 12 families. But what did they do? They went into young families and they told them, listen, you just got married, you cannot afford $18,000, but you could afford $1,800. And they took 10 young families for 1 month. And why? Because he told me this is the way we educate our families. From when you are already starting to establish yourself, you get married, and you can't afford $18,000 because you just started your life. You could afford $1,800. So this is a way, because why? Because we want them to eventually, they are going to be the leaders of the community when they get a little bit older. We want them already from a young age, from being a young family already, to understand that you have to give. And this is a beautiful thing. I think it's great just to show, to educate from young age, responsibility. And I don't think it's in vain that even in our schools, when you see small kids, and each one of them, and it's a beautiful, I think it's a nice, really amazing way of educating. They, in the beginning of the year, they send an email to all of the parents. Don't forget to send, I don't know how many pennies for your child. And every day, this child, what does he do? All the children, okay, now it's time for tzedakah, and every child proudly, smiling, goes and gives, I don't know, 5 pennies to tzedakah. It's 5 pennies, so it's not a lot of money, but it's a child, and the child will remember that. When I was I gave tzedakah. And this is what we want to educate. The Rambam is saying that wherever you are, give something, okay? And coming back to what the Rambam just said now, there's a responsibility to know, to check into it, to have a committee in place, and to give the ani whatever he is in need of. Okay. Let's look into one more Rambam. The Rambam says the following: Mefarnesin umchasin aniye goyim im aniye Israel. When it comes to Gentiles, you have to give them parnasa as well. Okay, you live in the diaspora among the nations of the world. You have to give tzedakah as well too. And why? Mipene darkei shalom, because you want to keep peace with the Gentiles out there. If not, they're going to say, the Jews are giving only to the Jews. That's not fair. They live with us, and they don't give us. Why not? Says the Rambam, absolutely, they're right. Mipene darkei shalom. You have to keep peace with them. And by the way, I think it's relevant to the situation that we find ourselves now. Unfortunately, there are people out there who are anti-Semitism. We're not all about that. We want to live peacefully among the nations. And that means that we want to be in friendly terms with them. And that means that we'll give them tzedakah. Why? Because it's part of being kind to the other nations. And he says, "Ve'ani amchazer ala petachim en niskakin lo lematana meruba." That's another thing that we could explore next time. It says, "Ani," if someone is poor, and in mechazer ala petachim, what does he do? He's looking, right? He's looking for. He's going from one door to another door in order to get money. In that case, en niskakin lo lematana meruba. You don't have to give him so much money. Aval notlin lo matana mu'etet. But you have to give him something, a little bit. Now, by the way, what is the difference between this halakha that the Rambam is saying now to what we spoke about before? We spoke about before, the Rambam says you could give 20%, you could give 10%. There's a minimum of how much to give. Here, the Rambam is saying, if there's a poor person who's knocking on your door, open the door, Baruch haba, come in, I'll give you something to drink here, I'll give you. You don't give him $1, you give him $5. You don't have to give him so much. Why not? We'll look into it, right? So Because it seems to be a contradiction. Is it a contradiction to what we said before, when the Rambam is clearly saying that you have to give up to 20%, but here he's saying, no, you don't have to give him so much, give him a little bit? We'll look into it. However, the Rambam is very clear. You have no, you are not permitted to not give anything to this ani. If this ani is coming and he's stretching his hand, it's embarrassing to do so. If he's doing that, you have an obligation. You are responsible to give him something, even if it's something small. And you're not allowed to turn him around and say, I won't give you anything. ואפילו אתה נותן לו גרוגרת אחת. And even if you give him one grogeret, one date, a small thing, very small, still, give him something. And why? שנאמר, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Al yashev dach nichlam. You're not allowed to turn away with nothing, empty-handed. Dach, someone who's poor, nichlam, and he's embarrassed. The fact that someone is coming and he's lowering himself to ask for money is a good reason to give. You don't have to give a lot. You don't have to give a lot. Give something. Okay? So what is the difference? I'm going to give you one answer now, and B'ez Hashem, next time we'll explore that. But I think what the Rambam is meaning here is when you don't have a chance to look into it, someone is coming. You don't know who the person is. He's asking for money, and he's running from one place to another thing. So you don't know who the person is. So if you don't know who the person is, what we say before, you have to look into it. You don't have a chance to look into it. He's going to leave. A minute he's going to leave. You still have an obligation to give. You don't have to give him a lot because you don't know who he is, but give him something. And why? Because that's sensitivity as well. That's sensitivity as well. You could argue with me and tell me, you know what? This guy, he doesn't care if he's for him, it's not lowering himself to stretch his hand. There's something there. If someone is coming and he's really asking, it's embarrassing to do so. Maybe it's not embarrassing for him, but I don't know. But the fact is, he's doing that for the fact, just for the reason that he's stretching his hand, he's knocking on the door, and he's asking for tzedakah. Says the Rambam is a good enough reason to give him something, not a lot. Okay, and if he's asking for more, then you have to tell him, okay, no problem. I want to find out who you are. Let me look. What is you have any letter? You have anything else, as we said before, and accordingly, you have to figure out how much to give that person. Any questions before we depart from each other?
No? Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Firstly, I'm sorry if you explained this and I didn't catch it, but I don't understand the bit about because if we have a responsibility to the people in our city, and I know you said like we shouldn't give more than a certain amount to someone who was like rich and then they're not, but then like how are we going to fulfill that responsibility to the people in our city? And then as well, another question that like obviously in times of Ramadan there was like different forms of communication, and now like because you know you've got your phone, you can see on your phone like 20 things a day where there's like asking you, like you just see a link or whatever.
Okay. So I'm trying to get clarity on the question. The first question is regarding the poor people of the city versus the people from outside of your city, right?
No, I'm saying that like back to the bit about if someone was rich and then they're not, and then like you need to give them according to their things.
Right.
And I know that you said that you shouldn't give more than a certain amount of your income.
Correct.
But if you also have a responsibility to the people in your city, because there's not really like most places in the world have a lot of people who are below the poverty line. So if you're gonna prioritize fulfilling someone's needs, I get that you shouldn't do it to the point of making yourself poor, but then what about the responsibility to the people in the city?
So again, I think that we have to prioritize over what we are doing and use our mind to do so. So it starts, first of all, just for us to understand, it starts with our own family. Okay, that's number one. Then after that, it comes to the poor people of our city. Then after that, if we have enough money, then we go into the poor people who are coming from other communities. So there's certain I'm looking for the word
Hierarchy.
wait, what is it?
Hierarchy.
Exactly, hierarchy, right? Yeah, hierarchy. That's the way that you do it, and accordingly, you have to figure out of how much to give to give. And even, by the way, even if you have to, if you have to give to people from other cities, it should be less than what you will give to people of your city. Okay, so that has to come in place as well. And family comes first. So the family, you give whatever you. Main thing is my family. Then after that, whatever I have left goes to, first of all, people of my city, and then after that to other people. I hope that that answered the question. Okay.
Yeah. Is there a difference between individuals and community institutions? Like, let's say the synagogue is says, "Listen, we need money," versus individual, both in your city.
Good question. So I don't think it's a black and white answer. It's a very gray area, depending on what the synagogue is in need of, depending on what the individual is in need of. There are certain things that a kehillah should have. Mikveh, for example, is one of them. Mikveh is extremely important. So it comes to mikveh or something else that an individual is asking. So you have to make sure to give priority to what comes first. And if a person is not sure of what's more important, he should ask. The person should ask about it.
Okay. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Chacham. Stay tuned for the further installments, and Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach to everyone.
Take care. Be well.